I'm not sure how much of an introduction this week needs. Starship Flight 11, am I right? Since our video on that awesomeness, there has been so much new stuff dropped and a lot that we didn't expect here. That wasn't the only action for the week though, so plenty more to catch you up on. Let's do this.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Hey, Marcus House with you here, and we have had a lot of new detail drop in the aftermath of Flight 11 on Monday. If you missed my video on this the next morning, you may want to catch up on that first because this was a fun dive into the full flight. After we published that, of course, there was a lot more to come. These photos of the launch itself were fantastic. The first there, just after ignition, the fiery fury that creates all sort of mayhem around the now obsolete circular launch pad, and this view looking right up at that beautiful blue-purple exhaust produced by the methane-oxygen mix. We had some terrific new videos posted around the hot stage separation too from both perspectives. This is the onboard camera on the ship watching the booster fall away and fire up to burn backward with 12 out of the 13 engines active. Then the same view but from the booster's perspective. You can see the Starship right there continuing its ride to space. That was all just a teaser though, because check out this magic. I'm pretty sure that this is the most stable view that we've had of a flip landing burn with any of the full stack flights. It's hard of course with the cameras out there in the ocean, but man, did they nail this. As it falls through the cloud layer, I initially thought that they may have lost the video, but no, check this out. Now, did you spot the little boy out there floating around? Oh, that's so cute. Of course, they cut the video before the fiery conclusion, but fear not, they published another angle of that landing, and this one is even more amazing. Yes, indeed, they had multiple drones in the air, and wow, do we have some stuff to talk about with this clip. Now, we are definitely not going to cut back to a video of me contradicting myself in any way. SpaceX had learned their lesson from the metallic test tiles from the previous flight. We were not going to be seeing an orange coating on the ship after entry this time. Is that right, Marcus? Well, that wasn't true at all, was it? Once we had this view, it was clear that there was a nice rusty looking orange coating over a lot of the shield. Why though? The metallic test tiles were not on this one. Well, the main body of the ship is of course made of stainless steel, and zooming right in, you can see quite clearly here these areas where SpaceX had intentionally removed the heat shield tiles to test out what would happen. It turns out a lot happened. There is clear venting coming from a rupture inside the oxygen tank here, and we can see plenty of areas ripped into where the orange particles have obviously come from. It seems that the plasma has eaten away some of the stainless steel hull. The iron inside that material would have rapidly oxidized with the plasma, which contains plenty of oxygen to react with. This, by the way, is further explained by the greenish coating on the side of the orange, which we suspect comes from either the nickel or the chromium oxides that also formed similar to the red iron oxides. Now, there is also some of that white coating on the nose likely caused again by the intentionally removed tiles letting plasma eat away the ablative material beneath. Basically the same stuff that we saw in last flight, but clearly there was a burn right through which ruptured some of the header lines. Yes, that's a clear energetic flame roaring out of there, and you can even see some flame a little further down, still in the payload bay area. Now, even further down, these 2 points had burned right through as well. Looking at this image in the lift while they were stacking, if you look really close, you can see these 2 missing tiles. The top one there is at the bottom of the methane tank and the other at the top of the oxygen tank. These spots had an ablative layer underneath though because they were black, right? Wrong. SpaceX had just sprayed a little black paint on it because in this image we showed earlier, you can clearly see that those 2 spots are now white. Yes, that is frost from the propellant, showing that this was most likely just bare stainless steel. So, SpaceX were intentionally trying to see what would happen if the re-entry burned right through both main tanks at the same time. Well, they probably found out because with those 2 spots and the larger sections of tile above and below that did have some ablative material underneath, all 4 points seemed to have burned through, or at least took an absolute roasting. Can you believe it made it right through this absolute torture alive? What are you going to do to make sure that it survives next, SpaceX? Fire off a sidewinder at it? Anyway, what followed all of this was of course an absolutely astounding view of the Super Heavy coming in to look up from an ocean camera. Pay close attention to the sequence of engines going from 13 to 5 to 3 and then hovering in place. Oh man, SpaceX just teasing that there. No impact and explosion shared obviously, and just the fade to black. I'll bet we get to see a compilation of all of these explosions in the future eventually. Well, isn't it just a shame that the incredible Jack with NSF was there to capture what SpaceX refused to show? With a terrific view of the horizon, it almost seemed to fall in slow motion after that perfect hover, and boom, an instant explosive end as it hit the ocean at speed. All of course absolutely intentional. Now with that last version 2 Starship out of the way, that means the end of the road for the Pad 1 launch mount. A few hours after the flight, the team was doing this really long duration deluge run. It looks like they were emptying the tanks the fast way. No need to have all that water stored there anymore. That was followed by the CO2 storage tanks venting off what remained there too. After that, the booster quick disconnect extended as they really don't need to protect that anymore from debris, so yeah, that started to vent away too. You can even see the cryo lines under the orbital launch mount getting frosty here. At this point, all of this had been done within a day after the launch, so they weren't wasting any time. Not wanting to be left out, the main vent on the tower joined in on the fun too. Now all of this is obviously being opened up and drained to ensure that everything with Pad 1 is safe for crews to start ripping right into the demolition. While they were preparing for that removal at Pad 2, it is the opposite story. The work kicked back into gear as soon as possible, with the team installing a number of the flexible hoses to both of the booster quick disconnects. That also includes some of the main hoses as well. Soon enough, we might see the last part of the hoods go up once this is done and they've performed more retraction tests. Just beneath this though, look at how far the bunker shielding has come. They've only got a few areas remaining, but there's a good chance as well that these areas won't receive any shielding at all. We can see this in the renders shared by SpaceX from Slick 37 at the Cape. Really nice views of all this lately, and as always, thanks a bunch to all you amazing subscribers watching along so that we can have Shaun with us capturing it all. If you have any specific views that you would like to see more of, do reach out in the comments. Okay, so moving on, at the production site, we have started to see some incredible moves this week toward having fully stacked version 3 vehicles. On Sunday, the new PEZ dispenser was rolled out of the Star Factory and into Mega Bay 2. These dispensers are sized to hold and deploy up to 60 Starlink version 3 satellites, which is kind of nuts when you think about it. Especially considering that each of those satellites will provide over 1 terabit per second downlink capability and over 200 gigabits per second of uplink. That means that for each Starship Starlink launch in the future, they will be adding more than 20 times the capacity to the network compared to a single Falcon 9 Starlink launch. All of course while Starship will be fully reusable, so that's 20 Falcon 9 second stages that have not burned up in the atmosphere. I tell you what, with now well over 7 million active users, Starlink is quite literally going to soon be pulling in more revenue than NASA's entire budget. Needless to say, it seems like SpaceX won't be needing to steal underpants at all to fund Starship development, as was joked about way back here in 2016. Anyway, with this PEZ dispenser in the bay, we knew that this nose cone for the ship, number 39, would soon make an appearance too. Sure enough, the Star Factory door opened and out came the very first version 3 ship section for flight. Now just from these views of it moving along the site here, we can already see quite a few of the changes version 3 has compared to version 2. Most noticeable are these two mount structures at the base of the payload bay door here. We have actually seen these before on a version 3 test article, this aft barrel back in May. These of course are the connection points that will be used to dock two starships together. There are two sets of these of course so that it can lock in nice and secure. These at the base of the ship, and as we can see on ship 39 here, another two there on the payload bay barrel. There are many more interesting changes to talk about here, but first, a massive thank you to Odoo sponsoring this video. If you're running a business, you would have plenty of experience with all of that software trying to help you stay organized. One for invoicing, another for project management, something else for customer communication. Yeah, it's often a real mess. That's where Odoo comes to the rescue. It's an all-in-one platform that pulls everything together. CRM, accounting, project management, inventory, even your website. No more bouncing between tabs or software that just doesn't talk to each other. With Odoo, it is all connected and it just works, and here's how smooth it is. Let's say a potential customer drops you a message through your website. Well, that instantly becomes a new lead in your CRM pipeline with all of the details filled in. The Kanban view organizes these opportunities by stage, so you just drag them onto the pipeline to move them from one stage to another. When you want to reach out, all messages, internal or external, take place from the chat, recording the full history of everything. You can save your favorites templates for easy use later, set reminders for calls or meetings, and you will soon find that there is nothing slipping through the cracks. What about quoting though? Well, just a couple of clicks and your customer's information, products, and pricing are ready to go. You just send it and they can sign and pay straight from their customer portal in just a moment. That sale is now locked in and you didn't double handle anything. With all this data integrated, you can set up custom dashboards to show exactly how your sales are performing, and you can even instantly forecast your revenue ahead. For just the price of a few coffees a month, you get the one platform that makes running your business easier, smoother, and way less stressful. Just head over to odoo.com to check it out. The link is right there in the description below. Thank you, Odoo. Okay, so back to the first version 3 ship section for flight. There is a lot more to see here. Up on the nose, we can see that they have 2 Starlink terminals here, which is similar to what we used to see on the version 1 nose cones. These terminals were moved elsewhere on version 2, but it seems they are back again. There are also these Starlink terminals on the side of the vehicles, which on version 3 have been moved further windward compared to version 2. If we look at Ship 38 that just flew, for example, we can see that these are in line with the catch pins, but now they have been moved further into the tile body. Now, making this whole section look pretty neat is also the tapered heat tile edge that they have going around the entire tile line. On both version 1 and early version 2 vehicles, the nose cone has had just the hexagonal tile edges, but this time they've tidied it up nicely with this sloped edge, even on the leeward side at the header tanks. Not only does this look cool, it's going to let the plasma flow more smoothly with less turbulence trying to dig in and rip into the stainless material below. Interestingly, they don't seem to have forward flap cameras here now. Usually those are fairly obvious in the middle, but as you can see, they are not here. Those cameras seem like a really worthwhile addition to help monitor re-entry and potential flap damage, but perhaps with the data they've already gathered, they just don't need them now. That is, unless of course they intend to install them in the future, although we'd at least expect to see the holes there for such a future installation. Now, we are also really excited to see these almost inconspicuous 2 little steel oval cutouts in this ablative material on the side. Remember, they want to have the ships dock together, and for that, they certainly need the vehicle to have the fine control needed to move the ship in any desired direction for docking. Well, these ones here will ensure that once the ships have their leeward sides facing each other, they can still generate a small amount of thrust to carefully come together. We can probably expect more of these further down the ship right above the aft flaps, so keep an eye out for those. Now, a few days later, peeking through all the action going on in the Gigabay, we could see through the still open PES door. We can quite clearly see that the PES mechanism had been installed inside and was in the process of being fully integrated, so it is great to see version 3 ship action all of a sudden, but the Super Heavy team couldn't let the ship take all of the version 3 credit this week. No, on Tuesday it was all eyes on Star Factory once again, because out came this integrated hot staging and forward dome section. This is very likely part of Booster 18 because as it was moving across the site, we can clearly see the grid fin ports are not covered like we've seen with a previous test section. Now, this integrated hot staging is much larger compared to the now historic hot staging rings that we had seen. The truss structure gives a lot more vent area, which will allow the ship exhaust to much more easily escape. As we saw in the live stream the other day, SpaceX has added this non-structural layer of steel on top of the forward dome, which will give additional thermal protection from the ship exhaust. As confirmed in the Flight 11 webcast, the shape of that is mapped to the areas where the most heat is expected. We can see this on the section rolled out too, which gives even more credit to this being a real flight article. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually the same one that they showed in the live stream. Now, you may be wondering how exactly they will get the electrical lines up here to the top ring, as the booster will still have the active role of clamping onto the Starship above. Well, notice these lines right here. Yes, they enter some of the trusses at the bottom and then they exit them at the top. Now, it may appear that some of these attachment structures for these trusses are different, but that is because these are already covered. So back to the ring yard, not even a day later, the next barrel section for the presumed Booster 18 methane tank was rolled out as well and then staged in the doorway of Mega Bay 1. Soon enough, moved in. Now, if you have been keeping track over the past few months, we now have a 25 ring stack from the base of the vehicle to the common dome, making up the liquid oxygen tank, and the new integrated hot staging section with the new methane barrel at a total of 7 rings tall. That means just one 4-ring barrel remaining, and they will have everything that they need for a full booster stack. They really are racing ahead here, and I can't wait to see the first fully stacked version 3 rolling down the highway, heading towards Massey's to kick off its cryogenic testing campaign. Speaking of Massey's, rather unexpectedly, SpaceX shared some awesome footage of the test articles over there during the countdown on Flight 11, including a still frosted up B18.3 test article. They also mentioned that the other article inside the huge testing rig was tested up to an absolutely bonkers 13,400 tons of simulated thrust. That is well over the power of 3.5 Saturn V rockets. Just to put that into even more perspective, the Raptor 3s are set to generate about 8,240 tons of thrust in total, so there's a very healthy margin here. Now, thanks to RGV aerial photography, we can see workers made some quick work of the roof on the new concrete bunker, which appears to be fully repaired and the entire roof poured. With any luck, it will become more obvious over the coming weeks the purpose of what this bunker is actually for. We have seen some electrical conduit over here to the left, but other than that, nothing much else to go off. Taking a peek at the oxygen farm this week, we can see the new pumps are near fully plumbed in, with all the cryo lines installed on the inlet side. Only the side exiting here towards the commodities trench is left, and we can see here that they are setting up a box fan similar to the one at the launch site. We can see the giant fans connected to the bottom, so this will ensure large volumes of nitrogen or oxygen gas doesn't accumulate low on the ground, creating an air quality hazard for the teams. Looking over to the methane farm, it has become a little more clear that the pipe stands positioned behind the storage tanks to the east are offload stations for trucks to deliver the methane, and all of the lines headed to the static fire stand will indeed follow the path behind the blast wall. Speaking of, we can see formwork being staged nearby. Now, zooming into the static fire stand, we can now see the team has lifted the top level into place on the ship's quick disconnect. That should mean that we are close to getting our first look at what the new version 3 ship quick disconnect interface looks like. We got a glimpse of the ship side with this test barrel section previously in the ring yard at the production site, but it hasn't yet been implemented on any of their stands. We have a great view this week down into the flame trench too. We can see that work has been completed getting the trench cover repaired after the previous ship quick disconnect was blown backwards and broke a few holes into the top layers. A fun thing to note here is this mangled sea-level Raptor engine with the serial number 346. We can see over here at the ship cryo station that this is still sporting the version 2 interface. Now, the stand for this station returned to Massey's last week, as we can see here, so hopefully this is going to be upgraded shortly. All of the recent ships have been first cryogenically tested on this stand to verify that the structure is able to handle both the thrust of the Raptors and can handle all of the expected flight pressures in the tanks. After all, having a failure with the far safer liquid nitrogen or oxygen is far less risky compared to having a failure where methane is involved. So just a few hours after Flight 11, we had SpaceX launch another mission for Amazon's Project Kuiper with KF-03. This was the third Kuiper mission launched on Falcon 9 and from Space Launch Complex 40, only the second flight there for booster 1091, and on board 24 more Kuiper satellites. A shortfall of gravitas was the drone ship tasked for the pickup of this one, and that was it. The satellites were successfully deployed into low Earth orbit. As with the previous missions, we didn't get to see any views of the payload from the second stage on the live stream. Wednesday, they were off again from Vandenberg, but this time with a payload for the Space Development Agency. A fairly young booster 1093 on its 7th mission here, and this was the second of the 10 dedicated launches contracted by the SDA. What I thought was quite odd was, after stage separation there were no views from the second stage. Normally, I would say that this is due to the nature of secretive missions, but ironically, SpaceX shared this high-resolution image of all the 21 payload satellites beforehand. These join the Tranche 1 transport layer constellation. Of course, I Still Love You was the drone ship waiting by, and that left us with just one more for the week, another batch of Starlinks for the Group 1052 mission early Thursday morning. This was again from Space Launch Complex 40 for the second time in just a few days. In fact, this one has set a new record for the fastest launch turnaround from the same US pad. Only 55 hours, 29 minutes and 9 seconds since the Kuiper launch, which is just amazing. Another very young booster 1095 on Flight 3 and a shiny new set of 28 satellites stacked on board. We even got to watch a video of this specific set being deployed thanks to SpaceX sharing this after the fact. We haven't seen one with a lighting quite like this before. It was almost an eerie looking view there with the super reflective satellites projecting a spooky looking second stage. The third and last remaining drone ship of the week, just read the instructions, was out there as the landing platform for this one. Just a casual 3 Falcon 9s and a Starship this week. No big deal, right? We also had Electron action too, with Rocket Lab launching for Synspective on Wednesday. If you look closely here, Electron's fairing doesn't look quite the same, does it? Yes, Rocket Lab provided them with a custom fairing for this mission to accommodate the wider body of the satellite on board. Having launched once more from New Zealand, this was another radar imaging satellite for Japanese company Synspective, and this mission was named Our New World. This marked the 7th mission out of 26 that Rocket Lab has been contracted for. What is interesting is that this new Strix satellite is the first of Synspective's next generation design for their Earth observation fleet. Because of that wider frame, Rocket Lab needed to design this custom arrowhead payload fairing to house it, and it's a wonderful shot of stage separation there about 2 minutes and 40 seconds into the launch. About 50 minutes in, there was the satellite deployed into a 583km orbit by the kick stage. So that is it for the week, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, as always, don't forget to hit subscribe so we get to keep making them. If you missed our breakdown on Flight 11, check out that video right here. Thanks for watching all this way through. As always, my friends, I will see you all in the next video.